Thank you for coming out tonight. For those of you who've never been here before, we are Variety, and what we are is a wellness clinic. Wellness, nutrition, chiropractic. We want for you to have the best health and optimal life that you can possibly have. So everybody has their different idea of what health is, but what most people think is, well, you know what? I got up today, I got out of bed, I'm healthy, right? If you're not bedridden, if you're not in a hospital, you're healthy. But that's not actually true, because there's different levels of health, right? And what we want for you is we want optimal health. And in order for you to have optimal health, there's a triangle that has to be strong. And that triangle is physical, chemical, and emotional. In our office, we do very well with addressing your physical and your chemical. Chemical being nutrition, physical being your body. Well, one thing we have not been able to address very well is the emotional side. Okay, so all these three entities have to work together, balanced, in order for you to have health, which is a mental and physical well-being. Tonight, you're in for a great treat, and I'm so glad that you all came out, because tonight we have a special lady from Texas. Her name is Edie Carver, and she is going to share with you how your emotional side affects your physical and chemical side. So please give a lot of love up for Miss Edie Carver.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's a real treat to be here with you guys, and I'm getting some guidance here, getting lined up, some experimenting. So what we're going to talk about tonight is faster change. Like Dr. Trin was saying, it's three aspects that make up our health, and we're going to focus tonight on the emotional piece and how much the emotional piece impacts the physical and chemical piece. So first, before I start, I'd like to get just a little bit of insight on what you all are hoping to get out of this evening. Did anybody come in tonight with kind of a specific idea of what you were hoping to learn, or maybe any problems that you might want to get rid of? Anybody have any of those? You want to know how it works? Well, we're definitely going to cover that. Okay, so let's start out talking a little bit about what is stress. What we tend to hear a lot about is the causes of stress. The top 10 stressors: divorce, death in the family, finances, relationships, health issues, illness. Those are a lot of the stressors that we hear about. We also hear a lot about the impact of stress on our bodies. How much disease is caused by the primary cause being stress. But I'd like to talk a little bit about how do we know what stress really is? I've noticed, and I imagine you have too, that not everything is a stressor for everybody. Some of us can get really excited about something that's a total stressor for somebody else. One of the ones that came to mind for me when I was first learning about this was when I was a teenager, and I went to an amusement park with some friends, and they wanted to ride the roller coaster. I did not want to ride the roller coaster. That was not my idea of fun. And they said, oh, come on, you can do it. So we get in the line, and the whole time I'm tense, my stomach is upset, I'm starting to break out in a cold sweat, and I'm thinking, I do not want to do this. And we get closer and closer to the front, they're cutting up and having a ball. And I finally reached the point where, to heck with being embarrassed, I have got to get out of this line. I am not getting on a roller coaster. I can't do it. So what's the difference? Why was thinking about getting on a roller coaster such an issue for me, while for the rest of the group it sounded like a great time? The reason behind it wasn't too hard for me to find. When I was quite a few years younger, there was an amusement park in my hometown, and the roller coaster had jumped the track, and there was a fatality. So for me, you say roller coaster, and my thought is death, and it's not safe. And I'm not getting on that thing. For them, their experience was they'd already ridden the roller coaster. It was a blast. It was a thrill, getting all those feelings going. They had a lot of fun. So was it the roller coaster that was the stressor, or was it the internal reaction, the memory, where that came from? So the definition that we like to use in Faster EFT for what stress is that stress is the body's reaction to perception. And it's an internal production based on what we hold inside, namely our memories, our beliefs, how we grew up, what we learned. That's where so much of this comes from. The other thing is, talking about that internal stuff that's going on, how do you know if you have a problem? For me, again, thinking about the roller coaster, riding a roller coaster definitely fit into the category of problem for me. And the way I knew that it was a problem was how I felt. For them, it wasn't a problem. If anything, it was a solution for having fun. It was a good thing. So the way I know, the way I have a problem is because I feel it. Again, it goes right back to the communication. It's the feelings that make it seem real. If I remember going to the grocery store last night, standing in line, checking out, taking the groceries home, and I have no emotion or energy about it, that's not a problem. If, on the other hand, I went through the line, the clerk got snippy with me, by the time I get in the car, I'm thinking, you know, the staff at that store is so rude. Everywhere I go, customer service, what has happened to people? They just don't act right anymore. You know, it's a totally different situation, and again, it depends on what I'm playing right here in my mind. It's really not about what happened. There's a big difference between what happened and what I make it mean. And most of the meaning that I place on things is based on what I've learned all my life. And that starts from even before I was born. The stage was set. We can be born into the same family, and you've probably noticed how it's almost as if you and a sibling were brought up in different families. Well, in a way, you may very well have been. You know, the oldest child may have been born at a time when parents were getting along great. They were so excited to have that first baby. Finances were pretty good. No major problems. By the time the second child comes along, that whole situation could have changed. They may have been thinking about getting a divorce, or maybe they're just really struggling, and the last thing they think they need is another baby. Does that make a difference on how that baby starts experiencing life when they come in? Of course it does. And yet it's the same family. So here we've got the structure of problems. Like we've touched on, a problem is made up of beliefs, proofs, and memories. And those proofs are the events. Like for me, the roller coaster story. And interestingly, that roller coaster thing, that didn't even happen to me. I just heard it on the news. And yet I internalized it and made it real for me. So the origin of some of our stuff isn't even about what we've experienced. It can be something we've heard on the news. It can be a movie. It can be watching something happen to someone else. Again, we have all kinds of resources, and that's what builds a problem. One of the phrases that Robert Smith, who's the founder of Faster EFT, uses that seemed kind of silly to me the first time I heard it, and now it makes total sense, is he says, what you do before you do is what you do. You're going like, okay, what does that mean? What that means is, say for instance, you're getting ready to go on a job interview, and you have a history of not doing real well on job interviews. You always get nervous, your palms sweat, Maybe you start stuttering. You're all worried about making a good impression, and you just kind of freeze. And that's your history. So as you're getting closer and closer to the interview, you start remembering all the interviews that you've already been on and how poorly they went. So those are your proofs that we were showing earlier, that you don't do a good interview. So now you are so nervous that by the time you get to your interview, what happens?
You behave the same way.
Exactly. You do the exact same thing that you've always done. And on top of that, when you leave, you say, see, I am just a lousy interviewer. I never do any good on interviews. Well, of course not, when that's the program. But that programming was put in place to keep us safe. So let's take a little bit of a look at the unconscious mind. By the way, let's stop there for just a second, is really a great recorder, and that's what we're talking about here. It doesn't matter what the source is.